The hospitality had never hosted a dinner like this, and would never host another.
This whole charade is a trap. I can feel it in my scales.
6 warlords from 6 rival empires, each with armadas waiting cold, entered a candlelit room aboard a simple human vessel. In the cramped kitchen, Charles Beaumont, 73, placed the final microlief on the first course and wiped his hands on a towel. His hands were steady. They had to be. Tonight, 6 mouths depended on a precision no cookbook could teach. The antique brass clock on the wall ticked to the hour. At 1900, the first course was ready.
Peace talks. In a restaurant, the humans had a sense of humor.
If this chef tries anything, I'll crush his skull with the appetizer fork.
The candlelight is calming. I should not be calm.
They took their seats, each choosing a chair like a battlefield position. Charles Beaumont entered and stood at the head of the table, awaiting silence.
I will sit facing the door. That is not negotiable.
Every Keth thinks he commands the room. We are all hostage to this farce.
Honored Warlord Mara, your seat offers the finest view of the nebula. The chef chose it for you personally. Warlord Kor, the door is behind you regardless. No one enters without your notice. Please, sit.
The human speaks our tongues. This is either a gesture of respect or a reconnaissance operation.
I simply wish my guests to feel welcomed, Warlord Tsar. Now, if you are all seated, I will explain the evening's customs.
One by one, they sank into the chairs, not from deference, but from a need to know what would happen next.
Tonight is not a negotiation. It is a meal. You will eat what I prepare. You may speak of anything except the war. That rule is enforced by the kitchen.
He gestured. A server droid placed a tiny porcelain dish before each warlord, a translucent sphere, a pink flower suspended inside.
Is this a joke? I came to eat, not to admire a bubble.
This is a tension releaser, a gelée of saffron and Vashari sea thread. Let it dissolve on your tongue.
6 spoons lifted in a reluctant choreography. The flavors hit, subtle, layered, and far from harmless.
The balance is unexpected. Acid, salt, a whisper of sweet. You've studied our palates.
It tastes like nothing that matters. Give me real food, not perfumed air.
The flower was edible. Yes, it left a warmth. I have not tasted that note in many cycles.
The server droid reappeared. A warm, golden broth, steam curling, a single umbel flower floating at the center.
A Terran consommé, infused with Tsar Khanat crimson pepper and Ilithian star blossom. A single spoonful opens the palate.
You refuse to enjoy anything, Kor. That is not strength, it is fear.
The table paused. Sill's spoons stopped halfway to their lips. Tsar's mandibles froze mid-click. The broth was finished in a heavy silence. When the droid collected the bowls, something had shifted, a crack in the united front. The third course, a chilled Ilithian crystal gel, studded with star blossom petals.
An homage to Ilithian meditation. Cool, floral, meant to still the mind.
Sill closed their opalescent eyes. The flavor was a temple garden in twilight. Then, a Thalvan fire root, roasted on a heated stone slab, served just as nomads do.
Warlord Thal, it is cooked exactly as your ancestors did. Fire hearth, no water, just earth and patience.
Thal's furred hand hesitated. He bit down, and his heavy brow unknit for a single breath. The fifth course, a sliver of Ven deep ocean jelly, shimmering with its own bioluminescence.
This is from the deep trenches. The taste is flawless. You have dived the vents yourself.
I have traveled, Warlord Venna. A kitchen is a map of the world.
The plates were cleared. The sixth course was announced. Saffron poached Vashari sea thread. Mara's mandibles tightened. The sixth course landed. Slivers of sea thread coiled in a saffron glaze, steam carrying scent across the table.
That aroma. It is my childhood. How do you possess this?
A Vashari family once welcomed me into their kitchen. They shared this recipe with a stranger.
She lifted a thread. The texture was exact, the same soft pull, the same brine-sweet release, and her hand stopped.
In her memory, a small Vashari child stood on a stool beside her mother, watching the same threads simmer. My mother never shared this recipe. She said it would die with her. Where did you learn it?
From a woman named Serath on the Chasm Coast. She said the secret was in the yolk broth ratio.
Mara's claws dented the tablecloth. Her voice, when it came, was barely audible.
She died 12 years ago. I have not tasted this since.
The dining room fell into a silence filled with something other than hostility. A memory now shared. The seventh course arrived with less ceremony. A battered metal bowl of Kethfield stew, dark and simple as a trench ration.
That smell. You dug up a soldier's last meal before a bloodbath.
Keth veterans taught me. They said the stew is for the night before, the night a soldier decides who he will become.
Kor lifted the bowl with both claws, the gesture of a recruit receiving his first field kit.
I was 17. High Command gave me a platoon, and this exact stew told me to hold a ridge against 3 times our number.
Behind his eyes, a muddy trench, explosive light, a young Keth clutching a bowl as the first shells fell.
By dawn, I had 37 dead. I ate the cold leftovers and wrote letters to their families. I haven't tasted this since.
You carried that weight alone. All these cycles, and you never spoke of it.
We each began with horrors, didn't we? The first command breaks something.
The bowls were empty. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Kor set his bowl down with a heaviness that wasn't anger. The eighth course was a salad of Elethian star blossom, arranged like a meditation mandala.
A dish my Elethian mentors taught me. They said it was the favorite of their peace advocates.
You knew my teacher, then, Elder Leora. She ate this every morning.
Syl's voice softened into something rarely heard at a warlord's table. A eulogy.
She believed that war was a failure of the tongue, not the sword. They killed her at the border during a minor clash.
Tsar's mandibles clicked, the Zarkanate gesture for contempt.
Peace advocates make elegant corpses. They do not hold territory.
Syl did not flinch. Across the table, Vena's gills fluttered in anger, but she said nothing.
She held more territory with a bowl of this salad than you have with 12 fleets, Tsar.
The salad plates were removed. Tsar's sneer remained, but for the first time, it looked like armor. The silence after Syl's words cracked when Tsar's compound eyes fixed on Thal.
Thalvin, your people massacred the Zarkanic colonists at Rel's Peak. You sit here eating salad.
And your swarm bombed the Thalvin nurseries at Deep Silt. Do not speak to me of massacre.
The table shrank. Kor's claws tensed. Mara's hand drifted toward a knife that wasn't there. Charles's voice cut through, soft as a knife through butter.
The ninth course is a famine root porridge. Tsar Khanetet and Thalvan both ate it during the Great Famine, 2 centuries ago.
He placed the bowls. Gray, humble, smelling of earth and survival. Tsar's mandibles stopped mid-click. The memory of that hunger, shared across his hive, was older than the war. Thal's eyes widened, his hand reaching for the spoon as if it were a lifeline. They ate without speaking. When the bowls were empty, the argument was dead, replaced by something neither would name. The 10th course was set before them. Ven diplomats' rice, each grain steeped in tea, the shellfish gleaming like old promises.
You steeped this in Vashari blossom tea. That was the custom for peace talks.
Her gills fluttered, a rhythm she hadn't felt since her first mission, when the world was still malleable.
In her mind, she was 22, standing in that auditorium, the rice waiting on a long table, the silence before the applause. I was 22. We thought we could end the border skirmishes with words and a shared meal.
The rice dissolved on her tongue, releasing the smoke of 1,000 diplomatic halls and one broken treaty.
Food is memory. nothing more.
Then, why does this taste like a second chance?
Around the table, no one spoke. The candles had burned low, their wax pooling like old grievances. The 11th course was announced, a frozen cream made from an Elythian recipe so old no one had spoken its name in decades. The server droid lowered 6 small frosted bowls. The frozen cream shimmered like trapped starlight. Mara lifted the spoon. The cream dissolved, releasing the memory of her mother's hands folding the sea thread. Her shoulders shook. A tear cut through the ridges of her cheek and struck the tablecloth. Kor tasted and saw the faces of his 37 dead. His claw closed slowly, as if holding their hands. Syl's opalescent eye spilled a single tear, the tear forbidden at their mentor's funeral. The other 3 watched in absolute silence, their own plates untouched. Even Zar's mandibles were still. Charles stepped forward, removed the empty bowls, and said nothing. He had no need. The weeping softened. There was nowhere left to hide. The cream had done its work. Across the table, 3 warlords sat with faces wet, unashamed. The room held its breath. Charles collected the final plates. The candles guttered low, casting long shadows across the silent table. The silence stretched like a held breath until Venna leaned forward, her gills trembling with an old, unfamiliar rhythm.
We came here to renegotiate a failed treaty. Perhaps we should stop pretending. Perhaps we should write a new one ourselves right now.
Kor's head lifted. The others exchanged glances. Even Thal, who had not spoken since the porridge, grunted.
On napkins? With no lawyers, no staff? This is vanity, not diplomacy.
It is honesty, the only diplomacy we have never tried.
Syl produced a fountain pen, ornate, silver, engraved with the Elythian sigil for remembrance, and placed it softly on the tablecloth. Charles was suddenly there, a stack of freshly pressed linen napkins in his steady hands. He set them down and said nothing. One by one, the warlords reached. Furred claws, chitinous pincers, amphibian webbing, each taking a napkin as if it were a truce flag. The scratch of pens replaced the earlier silence. Old grievances surfaced, but rephrased as memories, not accusations. Hours later, the napkins were covered. Borders, reparations, a new framework. Charles withdrew to the kitchen. The soft clink of a spoon the only sound. The draft was almost complete, but the old wound between Zar and Thal reopened over the border hills.
Those hills are Thalvin burial grounds. Your claim is an insult to every ancestor.
Burial grounds. Your ancestors stole those hills from us in the last famine.
The voices climbed. Charles emerged from the kitchen, a tray of crystal sorbet glasses in his steady hands.
Lemon verbena sorbet. To cleanse the palate.
He set the glasses down, then added, as if an afterthought, while gazing out the window toward the nebula.
I've walked those hills. The wind tastes of ozone and wild thyme. It's no place for a grave.
Zar's mandibles froze. Thal's furred brow lifted. For a long beat, no one moved.
You've walked the disputed hills? When?
Charles only smiled, lifting his own glass. The draft lay there, nearly complete. Thal said nothing more, but his silence was heavier than before. Thal pushed his sorbet glass aside. The clink was soft, but the question was sharp.
You know too much, chef. The food, the languages, the hills. Who are you?
Charles met the old Thalvin's eyes. No flinch, no retreat.
I am a cook. Years ago, I lived on the Thalvin steppe. I learned to make tea with the nomads and listen to the wind.
He paused, as if tasting the memory of that wind.
The wind there never stops. It shapes the grass, the people. I cooked a stew over dung fires and learned what you value.
Thal's claw, which had been curled, uncurled slowly.
That is a private thing. No outsider should know it.
I only cook, Warlord. That is all I have ever done.
He turned to the kitchen. The final course will be a Thalvin honey cake. Your ancestors' recipe, Thal said nothing, but his eyes followed the chef. The final dish arrived not on porcelain, but on a rough ceramic plate. A single square of Thalvan honey cake, golden and dense, smelling of the old steppe.
My daughter's favorite. She would beg for it on festival days, her little claws sticky with honey. I haven't smelled this since the nursery bombing. She was 4. I found her under the rubble.
His voice cracked, and for a moment, the warlord was just a father, lost in memory. His clawed hand lifted the fork. The metal trembled against the plate, a thin, terrible sound.
She never had a festival after that. I buried her with a toy soldier. The war already had her future.
A tear cut through the fur of his cheek and struck the cake, the honey glaze dissolving like old armor. The table was a graveyard of empty plates. No one moved. Even Tsar's mandibles hung slack.
I fought for her. I kept fighting because stopping felt like forgetting, but I've forgotten nothing.
Charles stood by the kitchen door, hands folded, his face a mask of calm. The cake and the treaty napkin lay side by side, waiting. Thal wiped his eyes with the back of his claw, then reached across the table and took Syl's silver pen.
For her, then.
He turned over his menu and wrote in thick, clawed strokes, Thalvan script covering every empty space. The other warlords watched in silence. Then, one by one, they reached for the pen. Mara's signature was a curved blade. Kor's a heavy stamp, pressed until the pen nearly tore the paper. Syl signed with a flourish, Venna with a soft, rounded hand. Tsar's mandibles clicked once, then he added his mark. Thal signed last, his claw steady as the pen that had once written his daughter's name on a school slate. Charles appeared with a decanter of old Armagnac, pouring 6 measures without a word. The menus, now treaties, lay on the table like exhausted soldiers, inked, complete, real. Charles collected them gently, his hands as steady as when he had placed the first course. The clock read 23 o'clock. Outside, the nebula was unchanged, but everything else in the galaxy had shifted.
Why? You are a chef. You owe us nothing. Why did you do this?
Because every dish is a memory, and every memory is a choice. Tonight, you chose which memories to keep.
Kor stared at him. For a long moment, the old soldier's eye was wet again.
We'll need to institute a ceasefire immediately. The border posts must be disarmed.
The others murmured agreement. Venna began sketching a timeline on a napkin. Charles began to clear the glasses, his movements unhurried. In the kitchen, he set the decanter down and let out a breath he'd been holding for 18 years. Through the porthole, the nebula offered its silent witness. When he returned, the warlords were deep in logistics, their voices no longer edged. For the first time in 40 cycles, the galaxy had a menu for peace, and the chef was merely the one who served it. The warlords rose, armor creaking as they adjusted to the coming departure. Kor extended a claw towards Charles, a soldier's handshake, brief but firm. In the docking tube, the Keth walked ahead without a backward glance. Mara followed, but at the threshold, she halted and turned.
I have one question, Chef. Who are you, really?
A retired chef, warlord. Nothing more.
Her chitinous features held no expression. She searched his face for 3 long breaths, then inclined her head, a Vashari gesture of gratitude, and walked away. The docking lock cycled shut with a soft hiss. The dining room fell into a stillness so complete it seemed to hum. Charles Beaumont stood at the head of the table, the signed menus cradled in his hands. 6 chairs pushed back, 1 candle still guttering. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply stood, a man who had served a meal no one had ordered, but everyone had needed. Outside the panoramic window, the nebula offered its silent witness, unchanged by mortal treaties. Then, with the same steady hands that had plated 12 courses, he began to clear the table. In the silence of the kitchen, Charles retrieved a slim data slate from a locked drawer. His palm unlocked it. The holographic header read, Eyes only, Codex, Seraph. Deactivated 20 years ago. 6 dossiers. He had never been just a chef. For 18 years, he was a Terran intelligence asset, cultural empathy operations. On Vashar, he learned the sea thread recipe from Serath, Mara's mother, the dish that broke her. On Keth, he marched with soldiers and tasted the field stew that Kor remembered on the eve of his first command. In an Eleuthian temple, Leora taught him the star blossom salad. Syl's mentor, dead at the border, Zar Kanatate factory floors, shared the famine porridge, a hunger both Zar and Thal had known. Ven undersea habitats gave him the diplomat's rice. Vena's forgotten optimism. The Thalvan steppe whispered the honey cake. For Thal's daughter, the kitchen was silent. He closed the file. The ID read, Charles Beaumont, codename Cuisine. The slate held 18 years of cultural immersion, each dossier a key to a warlord's hidden door. For Mara, the sea thread was a thread back to a mother. For Kor, the stew was the night he became a soldier. Every dish was chosen because it could surface a specific wound. Nostalgia, loss, hope, without a single spoken plea. The frozen cream unlocked 3 hearts at once. The cake was a pre-computed strike on Thal's deepest grief. The menu was never food. It was a precision-guided emotional intervention, plated on porcelain. Codename Cuisine had one directive: feed them the memories they needed to remember who they used to be. No coercion, no drugs. Just the slow chemical dismantling of hatred through taste. The signed menus were proof the operation had worked. Its ink was memory, and its ink was peace. He closed the slate. Outside, the nebula offered its silent witness, unchanged. The rest would be history. A history written not in blood, but in the afterglow of a perfect meal. The treaty, inked on linen and menu cards, held. Across the sector, warships powered down their weapons for the first time. Headlines flickered across 1,000 worlds. Galactic Peace Treaty enters 40th year. The Hospitality Accord became the template for a generation. Disputed zones were reclaimed as shared heritage parks. Old enemies became trade partners. Border stations were dismantled or turned into marketplaces. The 6 warlords, now grayed and slower, met once more, not as rivals, but as architects of an unlikely peace. They never spoke of the menu, but each kept a copy of the signed napkin, framed in a private archive. Charles Beaumont lived another decade. He never cooked for anyone else. His grave on Earth bore a simple stone: Charles Beaumont, chef and peacemaker. 40 years after the dinner, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The hospitality still drifted, now a museum. The nebula still glowed. Inside the dining room, one chair remained set, a menu card beneath a candle. Charles sat at the cleared table, a cup of black coffee cooling beside him. The signed menu lay under his hand. Beside it, a single sheet of paper, handwritten in 6 different alien scripts, each one a thank you. Thank you, Charles. He read it, not with pride, but with the quiet acceptance of a craftsman whose work was complete. Outside, the violet-blue nebula held its vigil. No armadas, no fleets, just light, ancient and indifferent. He lifted the coffee, his hand as steady as it had been when he plated the first course. The clock on the wall showed a time beyond treaties. Morning was somewhere in the starfield. He set the cup down and let his hands rest on the table. There was nothing more to prepare, no course left to serve. The dinner was over. The hospitality drifted on, its name now a promise kept. 6 warlords came to dinner, each with armadas waiting in the cold of space. None of them walked out alive. Not a single one boarded their ship the same way they had arrived. Armor intact, but armor no longer needed, because the men they were died at that table. The warlords, the generals, the avengers, in their place. Something new signed the menu: a father, a daughter's memory, a soldier's grief, a diplomat's hope. The hospitality drifted into the violet nebula, its lights dimming like a fading breath. It became a ghost ship, a shrine, a reminder that the deadliest weapon is sometimes a perfect dish, served with a steady hand and a knowing silence. For 40 years, the treaty held. The galaxy learned what a retired chef can do. The Hospitality Accord became the foundation of a new era. The nebula watched, silent as always, fade to black.